What red flags or risk factors have you been able to identify for yourself in treatment?
So I have manipulation as a risk factor, sexual interest in coercion and rape, interest in children, impulsivity, using drugs and alcohol to cope, using sex to cope, lack of intimate relationships with adults also is an issue for me. Those are the big ones that I have to pay the most attention to, and that I've been monitoring to see what are warning signs when they come up, so I can recognize my pattern. So I know that, oh, this risk factor is kicking in. I need to go talk to somebody or understand why that risk factor is kicking in.
Okay, can you talk to us about how you recognize that those risk factors are starting to become a problem?
We are about to watch the parole hearing for someone who was sentenced to 25 years for what they did to the child over and over and over again. There's, of course, much more in this hearing that we're going to go through that might frustrate some of you. We'll unpack it with all the details at the end.
So it looks like, so we have Demas next, and is her preferred name Jade?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay. Any updates or anything that we should know about her before we bring her in?
No, I will tell you that I think at times she's been incarcerated for a very long time. And I think that this possibility of release has got her maybe hyper-focused a little bit on it. So I think that's kind of been the focus, and maybe it's not that she's made bad choices by any way, but I think that she's just been a little bit more vulnerable, if that makes sense. But I think she's very hyper focused on what she's going to do when she gets out and how she's going to be. I mean, I think she's been laid down for 20 years, so a lot has changed, and she knows that. So,
all right, we're ready to bring her in.
Let me go get it.
There you go.
You can sit in my chair, and then I'll just sit right by you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Could you please state your name, your preferred name, and your state ID for us, please?
Justin Demas, Jade, and 683-3460.
Thank you, Ms. Demas. My name's Meredith Lamberti, and here with me are Renee Schulte and James Moses, and we're the 3-member panel of the Board of Parole who are going to be talking to you this morning.
Okay.
All right. Why don't you start by giving us, a brief but detailed explanation of the crime that you committed, and also, what was going on in your life at that time.
So I committed second degree sexual abuse and indecent conduct with a child. I was a babysitter for a family that lived in the same apartment building as me, and the youngest son and I got close in that, and then I ended up sexually abusing him because he ended up staying with me a lot. At the time of the stuff I was going through when that happened, I had been raped in high school, and I was dealing with not talking about it, and I had tried to commit suicide, so I was still recovering from all that stuff. So I had been resorting to using drugs and alcohol, scared to get into adult relationships, and partying a lot, underage drinking. So.
How old were you at the time?
19.
Okay. So I want to back up a little bit. You had said that you turned to drugs and alcohol as one of your coping mechanisms.
Yes.
What drugs were you using, and what was your use looking like? How often, and when did it start? Things like that.
I used marijuana and crack. I didn't use the crack very often. I only tried it like 3 times with one of the roommates I was living with. But marijuana, I kind of just used at any party we had. So we had parties every week, so at least once a week. And I got introduced to marijuana by a friend in high school. So And then I got introduced to crack by one of my roommates.
And then what about your alcohol usage?
My dad was very lenient on letting us drink underage as long as we stayed in the house. So I got introduced to alcohol when I was in 5th grade, and it was just considered okay as long as I stayed in the house. So
Around the time of the crime, how frequently would you say you were drinking?
3 times a week, starting on Fridays, normally to Sunday night.
Okay. So kind of like binge drinking over the weekends.
Yeah.
And then you had mentioned your mental health. So can you
Yes.
talk to us about where you are at right now with your mental health and medications?
Right now, I'm actually doing really good with my mental health. I even set up my own mental health plan for when I get out on my own, and then ran it through my counselor to let her know. I've learned about EMDR therapy. I was going to start it when I was at Clarinda to work through the trauma from being sexually abused. And I ended up coming back here for treatment, so I didn't get to start it, but I've already had with the psychologist here a meeting with the lady I'm going to do. I had a false positive because of the lamotrigine that I'm on, made me have a false positive on a UA just last week, but they found out it was a false positive. I communicate really well here with the psychologist and my counselor. When I first got here, we made a wellness plan for me, and then I'm redoing the wellness plan again for when I get out to have all that stuff together.
Okay. I do see a note that it was a false positive. Thank you for that. So you've been incarcerated for a very long time, right?
Yes.
So do you know or have any connections out in the community where you're going to go, or are you aware of, I know you identified a number of places that you can go for mental health and medications. How familiar are you, I guess, with the community that you're going to be going into?
I grew up in that area, and all my family is still in that area, so I know the area really well. I'm very comfortable there. I know, even the mental health facilities to go to. I know where they're at. I know some of the staff that was there, and then my sister is a nurse, so for the gender dysphoria stuff, her boss actually already sent me a thing saying that I can go work with her on that because that's in Oskaloosa in that area. So I'm pretty comfortable with all that in that area. So
Okay, that's good to hear. So you mentioned your sister, and I think I see some notes about your mom also being a support person for you. Is that right?
yes, but I got to be careful with that because she also victimized me as a child. So I'm only trying to be around her a limited amount of time because I want to make sure my mental health stays stable and not go backwards.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other people that you have as a support system for you in the community?
My brother Jake, who's my trustee. I have an aunt and a cousin and a few other aunts and uncles in that area, and then my oldest sister, Tabitha, is there. So.
And then I think my final question for you before I let my colleagues ask questions are, what red flags or risk factors have you been able to identify for yourself in treatment?
So I have manipulation as a risk factor, sexual interest in coercion and rape, sexual interest in children, impulsivity, using drugs and alcohol to cope, using sex to cope, lack of intimate relationships with adults also is an issue for me. Those are the big ones that I have to pay the most attention to, and that I've been monitoring to see what are warning signs when they come up, so I can recognize my pattern. So I know that, oh, this risk factor is kicking in. I need to go talk to somebody or understand why that risk factor is kicking in.
Okay, can you talk to us about how you recognize that those risk factors are starting to become a problem?
When it comes to the sexual interest, I normally, my body temperature gets dropped, like I feel like ice cold and like almost like I'm touching an electric fence, getting shocked. And so then also like my ears will start ringing, and I'm realizing that, okay, my body's kind of thrown off here. It's interested in something. So I've learned to pay attention to how that feels and be able to pay attention that, okay, so where am I at? Who am I around? What is causing that? And narrow in on it and figure out how to remove myself from the situation and or go seek help and talk to someone on my, like, here's been my support system that we made in my wellness plan. So
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna see if my colleagues have any questions for you now. Renee?
Yeah, Jay, just a couple of questions. So you've been in for a very long time. So tell me what's one of your biggest concerns about being released? What are you worried about?
I think the biggest concern is adjusting after being gone for so long because it's been almost 2 decades. So there's a lot that's changed. And going out living as a transgender in an area that I know really well, but most people only know me as my past in that area. And trying to show like that I changed, I'm not that person, I think is going to be the biggest challenge because people in where I grew up are change is really hard for them to accept and realize in some people. So I think that's gonna be my biggest challenge is not backing down from being the person I am and staying focused on that and not trying to give up on myself just because they might give up on me.
And I'm going to ask the opposite. What are you the most excited about if you were to move forward?
Getting to transition further than just where we got to go in prison. And I want to continue my education because I want to start eventually a nonprofit that works with ex-felons and their families so they have more support in the community and build better reentry. And I think that it can start when you're in county jail. So I think you can work through it all the way through the prison time and the county jail time and then upon release. So I want to work on that eventually as a long-term goal.
All right. Well, thank you so much for answering my questions. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
James, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Jade. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Hey, doing pretty good. I saw that you completed a degree, associate's degree at Iowa Central.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I had started at first when Newman offered the Grinnell program. I started doing that, but I was struggling with that because I didn't want to change my behaviors and I wasn't recognizing how my behaviors were actually affecting me. So I ended up gradually shifting to Blackstone Career Institute and I earned my paralegal for that. And that got me into a rhythm of staying on time, time management, completing a goal. And so then I went and I started doing, when they brought in the Iowa Central program, I decided to pick up on that. And it was a fast pace, but it made me actually sit down and I had to start working on goals. So I had to sit there and know that this is what I gotta do. And I had to reprioritize. So instead of thinking inside prison and the environment I dealt with every day in here, I had to think outside. What is my life like? Actually prioritize what's important to me, and getting my education is extremely important to me. And I want to further that education. So I had to make sure I put myself first versus putting people in prison that I've met and those kind of relationships over myself. So it allowed me to grow. And then I got to help other people that would start the program after us. And like, I got to be their tutor and show them how to work on the system, like with the homework and stuff. So that made me feel better because it was giving back to not just for the college who took a chance on all of us, but it was giving back to my classmates and helping them, encourage them to move forward just as much and that change is possible for all of us. So I really liked it.
Yeah, I hear that in your sharing as you were answering the second part to my colleague's question. So in terms of what are you excited about doing if you were released? So
yeah, I would like to go on to my bachelor's in business marketing.
All right. And then when I hear you say business marketing, what ideals do you have?
Well, I figured since I'm nonprofit, a lot of like the to like get the funding and all that, you're gonna have to have creative marketing strategies, especially when it's trying to make people comfortable with working with people that are in prison and incarcerated. But so, and continuing that, I feel like you got to step outside the box, challenge your creativity, and it also builds up really good communication skills with people. And I'm kind of looking forward to that for business marketing because it challenges me to always be interactive with other people.
Okay, and then my last question, what would you say that if I was to ask you to state 5 values that you have today that you didn't have prior to being incarcerated, what would you say those 5 values would be? Or if there's more than just 5, then please share those as well.
Honesty. I like to always used to lie or tell half truth. And I found out being honest is a lot less stressful. I don't have to remember everything I said and try to keep the story straight. So honesty, I've gotten like I used to think family was important, but now I realize it's just relationships in general are important because your family is not necessarily going to always be there. And I've learned that through doing such a long period of time. But you can actually build necessarily a better family for yourself by the people that actually want to stay by you, support you, so they don't have to be blood related. So I guess families took it on a different meaning, but it's still the same important to me. Accountability is a huge thing for me. I think that you always have to hold yourself accountable and not put it off on other people. Make sure making sure you're using your I statements and don't blame your past situations because you still, at the end of the day, make your choice. I believe your attitude is important because every day you wake up and you make that decision, not somebody else. Even if somebody else is having a bad day and they're taking it out on you, it's still your choice to let that affect you. So those 4 are extremely important to me. And then my faith has become very important to me because it's a way of self-expression, but it gives me a purpose to be who I am and focus on what I want and try to encourage other people to do the same thing. And then I also believe in just self-identity, which I never really valued before. I always tried to please other people and do what they expected me to do. And finally, for the first time in my life, I'm actually living for me, and that by being transgender and admitting my truth. And so self-identity has become extremely important to me.
Jay, thank you for sharing. And that concludes my questions to you today. Thank you.
Thanks.
Renee, any follow-up questions?
No.
All right, so Jade, now is your time to tell us anything else that you would like for us to know or anything that you might have prepared for us today.
So I've learned that by being in prison, like I still feel in a sense that by coming to prison, like I got off pretty easy because I had so many charges that were quarter 70s and they ran them all together. And after taking treatment and putting myself in my victim's shoes, I realized that that was a blessing to get my sentences ran together because technically, like I would feel like I would have deserved to have them ran back to back because I did that to someone else so much. Through my own experiences that have happened in prison, I've learned to be both what it's like to be victimized and also to have done the abuse. So I've got a different output on that with like just how that affects the person. And it's allowed me to grow as a person and get to know more about myself and actually show more empathy towards other people and not be so self-centered and wanting what's mine, feeling entitled. So I don't have to worry about that. And it's allowed me a lot of self-growth and be more helpful for other people, like just even being like someone to listen to and encourage it. And if I can show that and I can do that for myself, then other people can do that.
Is there anything else that you'd like for us to know before we start our deliberation?
Hold on. Do I need to tell them about the investigation? Nope, that's it.
All right, well, sit back and listen and we'll let you know what our decision is. So
Okay.
Renee or James, what are your thoughts on the recommendation of parole to the work release?
I'm going to be supportive of the parole today. I thought this was a really good interview. Sounds like they've really been taking treatment to heart and learning a lot about themselves in treatment, learning a lot about what they like and don't like, and understanding the importance of medication and how it's been helpful. I was really actually very impressed with today's interview, and the desire to continue education and to go out and help others is also a way to give back, which was also very impressive. So I'll be paroling them. I think there's the 10H we discussed. There needs to be a 30A for minors, given the type of crime. On the 40A, substance use, mental health, SOTP aftercare, and medication compliance, and a 50A.
Okay, James?
Yes, thanks, Miranda. I too, like my colleague, I was impressed with Jade's interview. I thought she was very transparent. I really enjoyed hearing what her values are when she talks about being, honesty, and how she, described family. Not that it's been the best or supportive, but understands family, but trying to, I guess, find the right relationships that helps to develop the family that I think she wants to be around. She spoke of accountability, which is what I like. Just telling the truth and being truthful as she can be. So it minimized any ad libs or any untruths. The attitude, knowing how, that the individual is responsible for their attitudes and how they can shape their day. And then her faith, just having that spiritual, holistic foundation. And it was not intriguing to hear about her being comfortable with sharing her self-identity, wanting to tell her truth and her voice, and then just what she was able to accomplish with her associate's degree, and looking to further that, going into presumably a non-for-profit. So I too, in agreement with my colleague, to support DOC's position. Codes 10B, what was I at the residential facility, 30A, indirect contact with minors, 30C, 40A, still addressing the mental health. I think some cognitive classes will still be good for her, and substance abuse, just that checkered past, with debt, allowing her to drink at the young age of fifth grade, and the 50A, the alcohol. But the other one is continuing her therapy and finding places to lean on that really helps to support and give her the solid foundation around her that she needs in preparation to transition.
Right. So I'm also going to support this recommendation. I thought that Jade was very transparent with us in our questions, and we asked difficult questions, talk about her red flags, and she was obviously to me, it seems like she's done a lot of work on recognizing those risk factors for herself, talking about being in tune with her body temperature and how to remove herself from a situation that's dangerous for her is a lot of self-reflection. And, with this being a second charge, there's no special sentence. So if we want any transition period of supervision with a TDD of 28, I think this is a good time for release for that community transition. So I want to sum up. So this one, because we'll have to see her again, it's going to be the 10H. I have a 20A for limited internet usage because there's a minor victim. 20B, no early discharge. 30A, no contact with minors. 40A, SOTP aftercare, which James, that would cover the cognitive, but it would be the Good Life has the cognitive element. It's just aimed toward people with sex offenses. And then substance abuse, mental health, medication, and then the 50A. Did I miss anything? All right. So Jade, you heard our discussion, and we are going to grant your parole today. You heard our comments about your interview. We appreciate the honesty and the transparency that you had with us today. I'm going to explain to you a little bit about what we were talking about so you understand your parole order. So when you leave, you'll be subject to all the standard terms of parole that everyone has. And then what we do as a board is we place additional special terms of parole, and that's what we were discussing. So the first one that's important, it's a 10H. And what that means is that you're going to parole to the work release and start there. But your charges, sex abuse second requires by law that before you leave the work release, that they submit your release plan for street parole to us to review and approve. You won't come back to us for an interview, but we will just review your parole plan on paper. And that's just required because of the charge. It's nothing that you did in the interview or didn't do in the interview. That's just a function that we have to do. The 20A is limited internet usage. When you go out, because you had a minor victim, there will be some limitations on what you can and can't access for the internet. You will be able to do things like job seeking, but you will have some limitations on social media and things like that that will line up with registration requirements and SOTP aftercare requirements as well. A 20B is no early discharge. So you will stay on parole until your TDD in May of 28. 30A is no contact with any minor children unless it's approved by your PO. The 40A, those are treatment codes. So those are things that we'd like you to engage in the community. SOTP aftercare classes. We'd like you to get a substance abuse evaluation to see where you're at because you have been in for a long time. Continue to address your mental health and then today, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You
Thank
too.
Good luck, Jay.
Thanks, Newton. See you guys next month.
Thanks.
Guys, bye-bye.
13 seconds. 13 seconds was the total amount of time that this roach used to give the detail and to talk about the crime that was committed on this child. The rest of the interview was to make I'm the victim. I'm the victim. This was done to me in high school. This was done to me by my mother. This was done to me by the system. 13 seconds was what was done to that child. To an 11-year-old boy entrusted in the hands of a babysitter. Oh, he was spending time at my house. And then I was all messed up because in high school I was, this and then I was drinking and it's like sounds like this person's totally off the wall and it's like it comes out that they were just drinking on the weekend. Like who doesn't do that at 19 years old? The parole board's patting on the back. You're doing great. You're awesome. Good job. Go get out there. Yeah. You might want to give some credit for the idea that this roach was able to transparently describe all the risk factors, like fantasizing about sexual assault and fantasizing about children. But and I think you have to give credit where it's due that there was transparency around that fascination. I do, because we don't hear it. But knowing that, wouldn't you think that maybe it's safer for this person to remain behind bars? In the way that it was described, the feelings of turning numb and all this, like getting that was scary. In the final statement, I want to, when I get out, to not be so like self-centered and focused on myself. Yet meanwhile, in this entire thing, there was 13 seconds. It was from minute mark 3:15 to minute mark 3 minutes and 38 seconds. That was all that was used to talk about the crime. And it was so vague. I committed sexual assault, second. And indecent contact with a child. But I only did it because now blame. this stuff gets me so pissed off. And again, it's like, who are you going to blame? You're going to blame the roach who's, has serious mental problems, who is, just wired differently. They like children. What can you do? Or you blame the system for not protecting our children. And this is great. This judge, now, let's keep in mind this inmate who's locked up in a male prison, who is registered under a male name, who's in the registry, who's Justin Adam DeMoss, sentenced by the judge, refusing to take accountability, found guilty in a jury, filed 2 appeals claiming innocence, okay? In both appeals claiming innocence, not taking accountability, making a 13-year-old boy victim get up on the stand. This is the type of person who we're dealing with. Would you have known any of that by watching this parole hearing? Then you get locked up, and on the taxpayer's dollar, you get to have the treatment to fulfill your... That to me is crazy. It just is. This should not be taxpayer responsibility. It just shouldn't. We have people that are dying. We have veterans that can't get medical help. We have law-abiding citizens who have worked their whole lives who can't get the help they need. But in prison, you can have a total voluntary type of expensive process done because you feel like it? You get locked up, 25-year sentence for sexually assaulting a 13-year-old child who was entrusted in your care over and over and over and over again. And then when you're locked up on a taxpayer dollar, you get to have your transition? I don't care what you do on your own time. I don't care what you do on your own dollar. By God, I'll support you. Hallelujah. But on the taxpayer dollar, while in prison, make it make sense. And this isn't just Iowa. We have seen this in Connecticut. We have seen it in Utah. And I know there's going to be everyone coming on here and saying, Mandoo. Cancel Mandoo. Let's read this appeal. Because we do live in a world now where the predator or the abuser seems to have more rights than the victim, than the children. That's madness. And this channel speaks on behalf of the victims, who you realize that there was no one here speaking on behalf of the victim. I don't believe that there are problems with whatever. I have no proof of it. But in many cases, the victims aren't properly notified. And we've never seen a DA show up in an Iowa hearing. I don't know if it's just something they don't do. Background facts and proceedings. Sometime around May 20th, 2005, 11-year-old CG reported bad touching by DeMoss. CG was interviewed and examined on May 31st, 2005. The medical examination revealed no physical evidence of sexual assault. The physician who performed the exam, Dr. Mark Esther, nonetheless concluded, based on CG's behavior and statements, he had been assaulted no more than 20 times, but at least 4 to 8 times or so. The same day, Sheriff Daniel Johnson located DeMoss. He told DeMoss he wanted to talk to him at the law center. DeMoss agreed to go with Johnson and rode to the front seat of the patrol car. DeMoss asked Johnson why they were going to the law center, and Johnson told him they would talk when they got there. Sergeant Todd Stewart joined Johnson and DeMoss when they arrived. DeMoss signed a statement waiving his Miranda rights. When asked if he knew why he was there, DeMoss answered he had heard rumors involving himself and CG. The officers told him that they knew about the situation and advised DeMoss to tell the truth. According to both officers, DeMoss answered their questions and admitted to fondling CG at least 12 times and performing this, and how that is still only 2 and I with him 10 or 11 times. He then wrote out and signed a 3-page statement describing how he had gone from babysitting CG in November 2004 to being his friend and to being a sexual partner. In April and May 2005, DeMoss was friends with some of CG's older siblings and had helped babysit the younger children, including CG, while their mother worked late. In November, CG's mother asked if CG could move in with DeMoss due to CG's behavioral problems and other difficulties. While the mother worked late, CG's mother asked if CG could move in with DeMoss. Due to CG. Wait. CG moved in with DeMoss on November 20th, 2024. The arrangement was only supposed to last 1 month, but CG continued living with DeMoss for 6 months. How does this happen? Come on. Oh, come on. That just doesn't make any sense. During some of that time, DeMoss shared an apartment with 2 other individuals. According to DeMoss' statement in February 2005, CG allegedly began, come on, Mom. What the hell? Allegedly began both asking DeMoss, who was homosexual, about DeMoss' sexual orientation and questioning his own orientation. It was at that time that he's 11 years old. DeMoss wrote that the two began to see each other. DeMoss claimed he told CG that they could not engage in sexual relationship due to their age difference. DeMoss and CG moved into a 2-bedroom house on April 20th, 2005. According to DeMoss' statement, it was at this time he and CG began engaging in sexual activities. The statement goes on to describe in detail progression of those activities. It states the two had intercourse 11 times and oral 3 times. The statement also mentioned hand to genital contact, but does not say specific number of occasions. At trial, DeMoss testified he never had contact with CG. He stated his written statement only recounted the rumors he heard about himself and CG. He also stated officers gave him suggestions for details and dates. CG testified via closed-circuit television. He stated DeMoss took off their clothes and touched. Okay. I'll put the links in the description. It's just so sickening. On the second day of trial, DeMoss moved for mistrial. The mom should be in prison with him, frankly. On second day of trial, DeMoss moved to mistrial. The trial judge had asked the court reporter outside the presence of the jury whether any witness had yet spoken to issue of identity. The court reporter acknowledged no one had pointed out the defendant. The judge told the court reporter to advise both attorneys. The judge had asked whether identity was in the record. Both attorneys agreed there had been no evidence as the identity court heard arguments. Concerning the motion outside the presence of the jury, they denied it. The state recalled Sergeant Stewart's identity to DeMoss. I don't know. The jury found DeMoss guilty of 11 counts of second-degree sexual assault, abuse, and 12 counts of indecent contact with a child. Why is it not first degree? They're saying, would first degree... I don't know. The court sentenced him, I guess first degree is it's just not consent, though. But I guess they're saying that if it would be more physical pain or something. The district court sentenced him to indeterminate terms of imprisonment, not exceeding 25 years on each count. Second-degree sexual abuse imprisonment exceeding 2 years, blah, blah, blah. The court ordered sentences to run concurrently. It also issued a 26-year no-contact order for the child and his family. Now, here's what's crazy about this. I'll tell you. which is in his appeal. There was a lot in the appeal, but in the appeal, one part of the appeal was the no contact order, to remove the no contact order. And believe it or not, that was the one part that won. No contact order vacated and remanded for sentencing. So even through all of this monster was saying, no, I don't want the no contact order to exist. And the court agreed. I asked Richard, I said, how is that possible? Richard basically says that it was, apparently they felt that the law applied to the no contact order violation was wrongly applied. So the order was nullified. It seems that the parole board still has in place a no contact order, which is great. But I don't understand why they thought it was wrongfully applied. They bring up here like a confession letter that was brought up in the appeal. Damas never gave the child a letter. In the letter, Damas asks CG forgiveness for the one thing that happened one night. He states his conscience is full of guilt. He also references CG getting out of bed and going upstairs when someone came to the door. At that point, the letter states, reality began to sink in for me. Sixth, Damas testified most of his written confession was true, including the child's reported interest in sexual orientation and the perception that the house was their first place together. The only parts he denies are those having dealt with sexual contact. Finally, Damas concedes there is evidence sufficient to convict him of one count of second-degree abuse and 2 counts of indecent contact. We conclude there is sufficient evidence to support the jury's verdict. And then there was another appeal. Where Damas acknowledges he has certain responsibilities and expectations to abide by because of his age and maturity level, but admits he let his thoughts, feelings, and emotions get in the way first, and that was wrong. Although Damas claimed at trial the letter was an apology for a kiss on the cheek. It's the same letter. A jury could assess his credibility and reject this claim. I don't know. There's another appeal that they wanted to change the venue. So, anyways, the one good news is yes, I think 20 years in prison, which is just much more than what we're used to seeing. I mean, let's be real, we're used to seeing 2-3 years for this type of stuff. Richard has the notes here. 85% would have been 21 years. So I don't think the 85% is even there yet. But the good time date was going to be 2028, 5/10/2028. And there you have it. I mean, that this was called a good parole hearing is madness. I don't think he got anything out of it except knowing that this person at least identifies the core interests and fantasies are, which are scary and dangerous. Very scary and dangerous. And this just reminds me of how important it is to always go into the bathrooms with your children, because you don't know who's going to be in there. You can never be too safe, because the world permits monsters to walk amongst us. And we just saw one that's about to get released. And with that, I'll let you go.